Some things about Dana you need to know is that he's the most valuable guy on the Champions Tour. Because what you need on the Champions Tour is guys that not only play fantastic, but are entertainers as well. And that love people and that interact with people. He's got a lot of records, but one of them is he's signed more autographs than anyone I've ever seen in my life. Every autograph gets signed, every kid gets talked to, every person gets looked in the eye and visited with. I just played with him yesterday, and if you think at 67 that he's lost any of his skill, he shot his age yesterday, 65, under his age. Shot 30 on the front nine, then just kind of coasted on the back nine. I got to be his partner, and we got to win. He says every time I play with him, he has to shoot like that so that we can have a chance to win. Dana played 264 straight tournaments. Now that doesn't sound like much, but imagine trying to qualify on the tour to play 264 tournaments. Then think about going out every week with sore elbows, headache, flu, whatever happens, missing your flights and never missing a tournament for 264 straight tournaments. He's called the Iron Man. And that record will never be broken by anyone. No one has a chance. Just to give you an idea how much strength he has to play golf and everything. But what he'll tell you in a minute here is how, even with all that ability and all that success and all that endurance that God's given him, the thing that maintains him is God's grace. That's what gives him his contentment, not what he can do. And I hope we make that clear to you guys here today. Dana led the tour every year that I was out there in birdies. He always had these birdie machines, so he always top of the list on the stat thing was who made the most birdies this year. Dana Quigley, this many hundreds. He was Player of the Year in 2005. I know because he gave about 10% of it to help us build a bunch of stuff in the Philippines, so I know that was a big year. I remember that well. Very generous, him and Angie. They've done all kinds of work with us in the Philippines, but most of all, he's been my best buddy. I've got the caddy for Dana many, many times, and he'll probably tell you in a few minutes that I've been the best caddy by far that he's seen in golf.
Not.
But Dana, start us off with a good golf story. Probably one with me as your caddy would be a good one to start off.
What's funny? My golf game's non-existent.
Tell them about one of your great events, like the one that you won, the first one you won, and how you got on tour and ever qualified, because you didn't play the regular tour much.
Well, that was in New York. I don't remember the golf course name, but anyway, I was a Monday qualifier. I went out with absolutely no status. I was a club pro all my life, and when I turned 50, I started to qualify. Actually, the president of my club, I was a club pro in Rhode Island. The president of my club came up to me around Christmas. I'll never forget it. And he said, "What's your plans for next year?" So I said, "Well, I'm going to go out on Mondays and try to qualify, and the success rate is about maybe 10%, 5% for good players." And then I'll come back to the club Monday night, and because Monday's a day off at the club anyway. He says, "No, you're not." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You either pick our club or go chase this crazy notion of yours to play professional golf." Then the guy at the club, the president, didn't think I could beat anybody. So I changed my dream, and I didn't. It was my dream, and he wasn't going to interfere with it. That's a good thing for any of you with your kids or grandkids or whatever. Don't ever snuff out them chasing their dreams. You let them do it, man. It's if they don't worry about them experience failure, because it's what makes you stronger anyway. So I went and played. I quit my job and went out and played. And didn't have status, and I played 8 Mondays. I qualified for 4 of them. I never shot higher than 69 on a qualifier. And in the 8th tournament, which was Long Island, I qualified with 65 at Bethpage and won the tournament.
Thanks, Dana. We've had some wonderful moments. Like, I love caddying for him because you never know what's coming out next to Dana. And I don't think the players do either. They'd laugh at us all the time because of the way we talk back and forth at each other as friends. And one time we were in Valencia, I think it was, when you played so bad on the front
nine.
nine.
Eagle. Yeah.
He was awful on the front nine. And we're coming around, and he's like 3-0.
And he told me too, by the way.
I said, "Man, you're playing awful. What's the problem?" He said, "Well, maybe you ought to pray for me." I said, "I am. I'm going to pray for you." And this hole was the 9th hole, long par 5. Dana goes back to the tee, and I walk ahead, and I'm just saying a little prayer. Lord, how about a little encouragement, please, for Dana? Anything so he can feel better, you know? And so Dana hits it right down the middle, and I go over and give him his club, and I said, come on, Dana, get this one on. He can reach it in 2. That'd be a birdie. That'd be an answer to prayer right away. Come on. I prayed for you. He said, okay. So he blocks this 4-iron way over there. And it's grass about this deep. We got no green to work with, and I'm thinking, stagger me, this is awful. So I'm just sitting there going, I hope he saves bogey. And he opens up his face. He's got this grin on his look. He says, he always thinks when you get in these worst places, Dana's attitude is, this is when I get to show you how good I am. He really thinks that way. And he taught me that too, Tom. Don't worry about that. That's your time to show you got some talent. You know, try it. So he hits this high, beautiful lob, and I went, oh, that looks great. Bip, 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 in. Eagle. I went, oh, thank you, Jesus. That was great. And we got in the cart, and I said, how about that for the Lord? He said, the Lord, I did that one all on my own. Tom, give me the Lord.
I said we want the Lord on the back nine.
On the back nine. And man, did he get involved, huh? And Dana shot about 4 or 5 under on the back nine, and there we went to the top of the board. Well, we've had so many neat experiences like that. How about the time we played in Austin and you let me caddy? I was caddying then, and Bernard was playing, and Bernard mentioned that maybe he could use me to caddy that. I said, oh, I can't. I've got a caddy for Dana. And of course, Bernard was at that point was winning like he is now all the tournaments, and so I said, I'm caddying for Dana, so I'll have to caddy for Dana on Sunday and everything. And Dana said, well, I think this might be a good week for us. And we got out there, and he played pretty good.
No, but you didn't finish. Bernhard asked him to caddy Sunday afternoon, the back nine, because his son had to fly out to go to school. And
Yeah.
Tom says, Bernhard, I'm caddying for
caddying for
Dana.
Dana.
And Bernhard said, well, you guys will be through, so could you come out and caddy for Dana?
I'm sorry, Bernard, we didn't mean to say that.
Don't apologize to him. That's what motivated. Listen.
I went right to Dana and I said, you know, Bernard wants me to caddy for him on the back nine when we're done on Sunday. And he went, which means he has to play bad enough to be done on Sunday early, see? And so Dana said, here we go, and off we went. And I had never had so much fun caddying for him. He hit everything stiff, you know. Tom, you want to read this? I go, read this. It's a foot. Just hit it straight, you know. And we came down to the finish, and on 17, it was a long par 5, and Dana birdied a lot of par 5s because he's such a tremendous wedge player and so accurate. So he hits his drive down the middle, 3-wood down the middle. He's got a little wedge in there. No, he hits it in the trap on his second shot. And I go, oh, not there. Because that's the worst. It was short-sighted, if you know golf. You got nowhere to work. He's got a downhill lie in the trap, and you got a downhill lie. He lands on the green, so he's going to the other trap. And I'm going, that's not going to. And we're right in the leaderboard. We've been climbing all the way up, and guess who's ahead of us? Bernard Langer. And we're just chasing Bernard, you know. And so we get in there. I said, Dana, you got this shot. Not. But I said, you got this shot, you know. And Dana happens to be one of the best trap players ever. That's the truth. Him and Gary Player, probably the two best trap players
I tell
I've
Gary
ever
I'm better than he is.
It's pretty close. It's pretty close. That's two terrific trap players. Anyway, Dana cuts one out of this trap. He saws under it, comes out there about that far, and he makes it for birdie. Now we're right there behind Bernard, passing everybody. And we go to the 18th, and the 18th at that time was a par 3 over water, kind of like 12 at Augusta, but at about 40 yards.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You just can't, there's just very little sliver to hit it just right out there. And you got to get the club right. And Dana says, Tom, what do you think? I got a 5. I said, no, it's a 4.
And it stands right abutting the tee.
The tee is, yeah, you got 1,000 people and they can hear you talking, so you talk kind of quietly. Except Dana and I don't talk quietly, so he goes, what do you like? I said, it's the 4. Dana, don't mess around here, the water. He goes, no, I got 5. 5 is the club. He said, Dana, you asked me, I'm telling you, it's a 4. Now we're having this discussion, argument. People in the stands are starting to giggle, and they're going, look at these two guys, how did they do it, you know? And finally he says, what do you really like? I said, I like the 4. And he says, no, I'm hitting the 5. So I went up to the ball, and the ball was teed up, ready to go, and in front of everybody I went, take a deep breath, buddy. And the place, they just went crazy. Dana steps up, hits it about 8 feet. Greatest shot you ever saw. What Dana needs is controversy. He needs laughter. He needs talk. And if you know that, you can do that. But they thought we were actually crazy, you know?
To make a long story short, we finished second to Bernhard.
Second to Bernhard by one. Should have caddied for Bernhard, you know? Oh, gosh. Well, tell us a little bit. We tell them about the fun things that happen. We've been content in a lot of situations, but tell them about Devin and what a great kid he is and everything, and what he's gone through and you've gone through, and how your faith, you found contentment even in this awful situation.
That's easy. First of all, I want to ask everyone a question. Anyone out there not had any difficulties in their life at some point? Raise a hand if everyone has had difficulties. The Lord promises, you know that all throughout the Bible you're going to have difficulties. Anyone thinks they're going to have some coming up at some point? All right, we're all kind of unison in this thought. And my point of thought is, I played, this is my 16th year on the Champions Tour. I played, and life was really, really good for me for 15 years out there. Well, I should say probably the first 12. And I thought I didn't have any problems. I had, obviously financially I was fine. I had a great wife that was with me every step of the way. I had great friends like Tom Randall and a lot of the guys on tour. I was on TV every week. I mean, I just didn't look back and think that there was anything bad could happen. And on December 1st, 2012, my son got in a car accident. He hasn't moved yet since that day. He's got a traumatic brain injury, so we have, it's totally up to the Lord, but I want to share with you the fact that day my life didn't end. My world didn't end. I still had to go on. There's only way I could do it is through the Lord. Jesus gives us he's the only one that can give us peace and comfort through something like this. Devin was my best friend. He was my caddy. I played golf with him every day. He was a great kid.
Great golfer, too.
Yeah. And when I went in the hospital that night of the accident, the first words that the doctor uttered to me is he said, "You and your wife, there's no rooms in the hospital here for you and your wife. You can go on home and we'll call you when it's over." Now, obviously this is probably the worst phone call any parent can ever get. I mean, we all dread that, I'm sure. And I did as well. But I'll never forget my first words to the doctor instantaneously from when he said that. I said, "You have no idea about the power of our God." Because it was God that's going to carry Devin through. It's God who saved him. The doctors obviously saved him. He immediately had a hole cut in the top of his head, a catheter put in so that his head wouldn't swell and the brain wouldn't swell. But they gave him no chance. And I gave him every chance because I knew the Lord was with him. To make a short story shorter, 4 weeks, my good friend at home, Pastor Sean at Christ Fellowship, he has a fellowship for 20 to 30-year-olds on Tuesday night, and he gets 500 or 600 kids. And we tried to get Devin to go, and we couldn't talk to him. So one time he told Devin, "Man, there's some really good-looking chicks there, man. You got to go." And my son was there the next Tuesday. And a couple of Tuesdays with Pastor Sean preaching, he gave his heart to Christ, which was, I'm going to say, November 5th. The accident was December 1st, so November 5th he gave his heart to Christ. On November 21st, Sean had an instantaneous baptism out in the hot. It's actually like a hot tub at the back of the church, and Devin was the first one that jumped up. And if I can say this without being emotional, it was the single most comforting thing to me that no Devin had Christ. So I knew Devin and Jesus had a relationship. I knew Jesus would watch out for Devin. And I really, I really never, ever worried about Devin since. That morning of that accident, I was obviously scared to death. But Tom, I called Tom, he flew in from Oklahoma. And my two pastors at Christ Fellowship convinced me that Devin was in good hands. And it was that single feeling that got me through all this, gave me the contentment that I was able to continue. Devin to this day is unbelievably well. He still hasn't moved. He's his mind is, his head is, his brain is 100% cognitive. He knows everything. He can watch a Red Sox game, a movie. He can answer any question with his eyes. He's on no meds. It's really kind of spooky to see him that healthy. There's not a mark on his body. This is all the doings of the Lord. He has no doctors that even approach this subject. They don't know anything about the brain. They don't have any knowledge of what could happen. They don't give you any hope. My hope is in the Lord, and that's all I need.
Some of you might know or not know that I just spent 22 days in prison in the Philippines. I was arrested on January 11th. Do you mind if I take a few minutes?
It's your show.
Thanks. On January 11th, the NBI, which is the most powerful agency in the Philippines, kind of like the FBI here, although the FBI doesn't like to be compared to them, but it's kind of like power, that type of power. They came to our orphanage, and they pulled my wife and I out of our bedroom on television with the bright lights like that, and handcuffed me and put me in a vehicle, told me I was being invited for interview, and I said, if I'm invited, I'd rather not like this. But of course, with Karen trying to ask questions, where's your warrant, what are you doing, why are you arresting my husband? They pulled all my kids, 31 kids, out of the houses that they stay in, and they put all of them in a bus, handcuffed me, put me in the vehicle. Took me 6 hours to Manila. I was very ill. I had a couple of infections because I'd been out in the province doing some really good ministry. The good part of this is we had 34 basketball games I had participated in and done my show in, and we had over 6,000 people respond to Christ. And so we were kind of on a high, all of us, at the place when this happened. And then the arrest came, and they held me for 36 hours. I stayed in a little corner on a piece of linoleum for 36 hours while they figured out how to charge me. They interviewed my kids very, very seriously and didn't feed them for quite a while. They came to me, this is kind of crazy, isn't it? It turned out that they were going to charge me with, and you probably saw it in the papers, with all kinds of sexual assault, rape, trafficking children, sex tapes, everything you can imagine. And so I'm waiting for all this, and they come up to me and they said, Tom, I said, yeah. They said, your kids, they're downstairs, they're hungry. The 31 kids downstairs in the detention, they've brought them in on a bus, and they said, it's 24 hours since you brought me in. You haven't fed them in 24, you haven't fed them? They said, well, the budget's a little tight. This is serious. I said, wait a minute. I'm the one you're charging, and now you're coming to me to feed the same kids you're charging me that I abused? Is this ridiculous or what? But yeah, you feed them. But I'm not giving the money to you. I gave it to someone else. A friend of mine that happened to come down to watch and make sure I was okay, and I said, you go get some chicken and rice and feed my kids. And they fed all the kids, and they held the kids, and they interrogated them, trying to get a case. And anyway, they finally did charge me, and my good friend Toto Chavez, the director, and his son Jake, my godson, and we went into NBI jail January 13th, I guess it was. And there were 40 of us, 40 inmates in a room about a quarter of this size, maybe the size of your normal living room is where we stayed. There were 40 of us, and I had my little place there, and we had one toilet for all of us. It was about as basic as it could be, I think, that you've ever seen. And I found my contentment there. I found contentment in that place, in that pit of hell. I found contentment. They let me keep my Bible. Big mistake, if you want me to give up. I had my Bible. I read it. I read Philippians. I read the story of Joseph. I read everything I could. And God gave me strength. And He took away some of the fear, because prison is kind of like long periods of boredom punctuated by short periods of terror. And you just wait for the scary moments, you know. And what God did was He gave me such a terrific strength, and every time I would read my Bible and pray, I'd get this warmth like He had His arms wrapped around me. And then I'd start dealing with everything every day, and then I'd get scared, or things would come up, or problems, and things on newspaper and the news would come in about how awful I was, and I'd go back in and I'd let Him wrap His arms around me, and I'd read and read again. I have a lot of things I'd like to share about what happened to me in prison, but I'd like to tell you, you got a taste of it. What you have to realize is I could not have done any of it without the presence of God in my life. I know I wouldn't have lived through it. I knew I wouldn't have gotten stronger and been joyful about it. And I knew I wouldn't have been content sitting in those situations. And I learned that from Devin and Dana. And I learned that from the Lord, that whatever situation you're in, He still loves you. He is sovereign, and He is in control. And I thought that every day. One more day, okay, He's sovereign. One more day, okay, He's sovereign. I was supposed to be 3 days, then 5 days. It turned into 22 days. 22 days doesn't sound like much, you guys, but it's a long time in that place. And I thank God for it, because I think He needed me to be there 22 days to reach the people I reached in 22 days. Believers would come from all over the country that we have served over the years, built churches for, pastors, we built orphanages for. People came, they can't afford it, and they would come days, travel, so they could see me 2 hours in the prison visiting area. And they would gather around Karen and I, and we'd laugh and tell stories, and then they would pray and sing songs for me. Sometimes they would come and visiting hours were over, so they couldn't visit to me. So I was sitting in my cell there with my 40 other guys, and I'd hear this singing. And I'd go in and look up through the cell doors, and I could see out through another cells and more bars way out there in the parking lot. And there were the believers out there singing to me and praying for me out there, because they couldn't get in to visit. That's the world that we live in when we have a personal relationship with Christ. That's the world where there's encouragement. I think we need to realize, no matter who you are in this room, my challenge for you, this might be my last one, who knows, all of these ones I've done for Steve. But I want you to know seriously, please don't walk away from here today outside of Christ. Talk to somebody. Go to a pastor, talk to me, talk to somebody.